and we are up $3,875, so 38% in 2 years. That would be great. So in this video, I will show you everything you need to know to code and run a fully functional trading bot, even if you have zero coding experience and even if you've never traded before. I'll bookmark all the chapters in this video so you can skip ahead if you need to. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. First, we need MetaTrader. We're going to download it for Windows. And then pretty straightforward here. It's just next. When it's done, you hit finish. Whatever broker you choose, they'll always have a demo account option, like a paper trading account. And definitely, you're not going to want to do this with live money until you've had a chance to test your programs and make sure that they're working the way that you want. I should add a disclaimer here. Trading is risky. I accept no responsibility for whatever you choose to do, et cetera, et cetera. One of the reasons that I prefer using a broker demo is that you have a lot more choices for which symbols to use. So see here, I can open a chart. I actually wanted to use Bitcoin for the demo just because it's what I do a lot of my trading with. So I have all of these choices. I can go to crypto here, and then I can choose Bitcoin. So by the way, this is the symbols list, the golden dollar sign, and you can go pick whatever symbols you want to trade with. So I'm going to use Bitcoin because that is my preference. We're going to go to cryptos and then choose the Bitcoin that we just added. So there we go. I have that chart on here. So as you can see, if you've never traded before, just really briefly, here's the current price of Bitcoin, hovering around $104,000 per coin. We are currently on this hourly chart, so we can change the time frame. Each candle represents 1 hour in this chart. If we switch to the daily, then each candle represents 1 day. We can zoom in and out. So hitting the minus key is allowing me to zoom out, and plus is zoom in. I like to zoom way out on the daily because now we can look at what Bitcoin has done over the last couple of years. And then we have the navigator pane up here on the left. We could have multiple charts open. For simplicity, I'm just going to keep the one Bitcoin chart open, and I'm going to get rid of this one. So that gives you a general idea of how everything works. You're going to find your broker online. You're going to get an account with them. They're going to send you your trade account details. So see, the server is PewPlum demo. Here's my login info and my password. That's how you're going to log in. You're going to go to File, log into Trade Account. We're not going to go deeper into MetaTrader specifically right now because that would make this video way too long. Honestly, you don't need to know anything more than what I've just shown you. All right, so let's move on to the moving average trading system that we'll use in this video. We're going to go to Insert Indicators. Oh, actually, it's Trend, sorry. Moving average. So that's a simple moving average right there. And then we'll make the period, say 200. I just want this one to be like aqua, so it really stands out. Okay. So what this is doing, if we zoom out a bit, is taking the price from the last 200 bars and it's averaging it. The output is this single point in time on this line. So that's why they call it a moving average, because it moves. A long-term moving average, like this 200 period one, gives you a very good indication of current trend. So in general, we know that Bitcoin is trending up. If we put another one on, let's go back to trend, moving average. You can play around with all these other indicators too, if you haven't before. It's kind of fun. Deep pink, all right, that'll do. And then we're going to do 50 for a faster moving average and hit OK. So now you can see this moving average is taking the average of the last 50 bars. So we have our red is a fast moving average, and our blue is a slow moving average. So how our bot will work is when the fast moving average crosses the slow moving average moving up here, we'll take a position, a buy position. And when it crosses back down, then we will close the position. The fast moving average crossed above the slow moving average back in October, indicating a buy, and then it crossed back down. So we really would have done well if we had taken that trade. Okay, let's start coding. So as I said, everything you need is right in front of us. The IDE button here, we can just click that, or you can go to Tools, MetaQuotes Language Editor. It's the same thing. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So that will pull this up, and I'm gonna move things around a little bit, give me more room. And what we want to do is start a new project. So we got a new project, Expert Advisor from template. next, and we're going to name it. I think I'll just call this MA, moving average expert advisor. So, by the way, for whatever reason, MetaTrader calls a trading bot an expert advisor. So we'll use those words interchangeably from here on out. If you're a beginner, that can be a little confusing. Like, what are you talking about, an advisor? I want to make a trading bot. It's exactly the same thing. So that's our name. We're going to go next. We don't need anything else in our template, so we just go next, next, and finish. So normally it just comes up like this. I have these two tabs. We don't need this sheet for anything, so I just close it out. And now we're left with our template. Anything that starts with two slashes like this is just a comment and has no effect on the code. So just for extreme clarity, I'm going to take out anything that has two slashes in front of it. I'll just remove all this stuff. And then I like to organize my brackets like so. Closing brackets are going to be left justified. It makes it a lot easier to find this stuff later on. And the opening brackets I put in line with the function. So now we're left with three functions. We have the onInit function. This is code that runs. Everything within these curly braces runs when the program starts. We have dinit on dinit. So when the program closes, everything in this code block would run. And then we have onTick. OnTick is the smallest amount of price movement that happens on the chart. So every single time price moves a little bit, this onTick function will happen. So this is where the bulk of our code is going to be. And in fact, our program doesn't need the init code, so we're just going to get rid of that. So let's hit compile for the first time, just to make sure we didn't make any mistakes. Before you run your code, you always have to compile it. Your computer is turning your English language into computer code. And it's that computer code that becomes your executable that runs. So we always have to compile. Now, if you have some kind of error, let's see if we take out this last bracket, then that error will come up down here, and then you'll have clues. So this is how you debug your code. Unbalanced parenthesis, line 9, column 14. We already know what it is. So line 9 has this open parenthesis, and then it is not closed. So then we know that we just need to put the closing parenthesis back, and then we can compile again, and we have 0 errors. You can see how important every little bit of syntax is, and as you get more advanced, it'll be easier and easier to see the kinds of things that create errors. So we put it back, we compiled again, now we have no errors. We have now debugged our first piece of code. So let's first look at what we have here. So this code block, this onInit with the two brackets, that means that this is a function. So this is an onInit function. As I said, it runs when the code starts. Everything within this block, so between the curly braces, runs when the code starts. Int means that when it's done, it will return an integer value. An integer is just a simple number like -1 or 0 or 5. And you see here, it's returning init succeeded. Down here, the onTick function, so you can see it's defined in the same way with the same brackets. Everything within the curly braces runs every tick, and it returns void. Void just means nothing. So we're going to add code in here, and we're going to add code in here, and then we're pretty much going to be done. So let's just add a comment up at the top for ourselves. And I'll just put, this is my first expert advisor. All right. You put anything you want there or nothing. That's fine. Just so that you understand that anything that is a comment, it's grayed out like that. It starts with two backslashes. This has no effect on the code. Those slashes just mean to the compiler you can ignore this line. All right, so let's get started. First, we need to include a file that allows us to take trades. So we're going to do hashtag include angle bracket trade / trade.mqh. It is a file that comes with MetaTrader, and this is just now including it in our code. Then we're going to declare from that an object of the cTrade class, and we're just going to name it trade. So we won't get into the specifics of object-oriented programming here, but it's enough for you to know as a beginner that that's what we're doing. We're actually creating this object, and we are naming it simply trade. So you could name it anything that you want. But for the sake of simplicity here, I would suggest naming it the same thing. We can even comment just to make it clearer. So we are declaring an object of the ctrade class. Now we're going to declare some variables. So just for simplicity, let's do this. So what we've done here is we've created a variable of the int type and named it fast handle. So an integer is just a simple number, like 0, 1, or -1. We talked about that before. Think of a variable as a container that can store a value for use during the program. So that's all that is. And you can actually write this. So we've declared two different ones. We can actually just write it like this and save a line of code. So then we briefly touched on before, the on init function runs when the program initializes. And here we're going to get started. We want to create a moving average indicator. So that's what IMA means. Now, I'll just give you this tip right now. Put your cursor on it and go function F1, and it will pull up the reference pages, which explains everything that it does and what the parameters are. And let me just type it out, and then I'll explain. First parameter here defines which symbol we want to put the indicator on. So we could have just said BTCUSD here, or gold, or yen dollar, whatever. But if you hit null, it will just apply this indicator to whatever you happen to have on the chart at the moment. So it's just simple to put null. Null just means nothing, by the way. Period current, so this is for whatever time period that you want. You could, again, hard code this to be like 5 minute or 1 hour or 1 day. But again, period current is just whatever time frame you currently have on the chart right now. And then 50, so remember I described the moving average indicator is however many bars. So this is 50 bars. It's going to take the price average from that. And we could change that to whatever we want. And later on, we will change that for testing. But for now, the purposes of this video, we're just going to do 50. Now, this is where you choose the type of moving average. There's simple moving average, there's exponential, there's linear, there's smooth. And for now, we're just going to choose simple. Again, that's something that you could play with later. And we're going to take the price at the close of the bar. So maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. You could do the price at the open of the bar, the median price of the bar, whatever. This is what we're going to do. So now actually we can compile this and we could run it. I'm going to hit the blue arrow here, which is debugging on history data. Then it takes a second and it's going to pop up and you can see it is now running on Euro USD, and we're going to change this in a second. We can speed it up with this slider, and you can see that the red line is the indicator that we created. So everything is working properly. I'm just going to hit stop. I'm going to close out of this. The strategy tester here is hiding at the bottom. Now you can see what it was actually running the strategy on. I'm going to change this to Bitcoin. And it's running on the 1 hour, which is fine. And then last year, I'll just make it shorter so it's quicker. I'm just going to run it on the last month worth of data. And then if we go back, just minimize that. That's what we don't need right now. And we run it again. So now it's running on Bitcoin and it's running on the last month worth of data. And you can change that to run it on whatever you want. So I will just X out of that. So our code is working. So now there's just one more thing, one more piece of complexity here. IMA function returns an integer, which is a handle. So this is our fast moving average. So it's going to return an integer that is really just an identifier. So that's why, and so really it's a handle. So that's why we use this term that we called it a fast handle. Remember, we created this up here It's an integer type container called fast handle that can store a value. And we could run it actually and test it. Let's do that. Let's do print just so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the value stored in fast handle at that moment. And a little space there, and then we'll go plus and fast handle. Every line of code needs a semicolon at the end so the compiler understands. So we do have a warning that we haven't explicitly turned this into a string. We don't need to worry about that. It's still going to work. So now if we play it and we look down here in journal, this is the value of stored fast handle. It is the number 10. So this is returning the number 10. That's the handle. Pretty simple. Maybe we'll use this later, so I'm just going to comment that out. We don't need it anymore. But we do need 2 moving averages. So I'm going to take that, and we're just going to copy and paste it, but call it slow handle. And our slow handle is going to be 200 period. And as a matter of fact, let's just do this. Just so we can see. This is the value stored in slow handle. Okay, and I could have just copied and pasted that. We'll run that. So now we have 2. So the smooth one is our slow moving average, and the one that's moving faster is our fast moving average. You can see the value of fast handle is 10, the value of slow handle is 11. You don't really need to know that. I just wanted to show you how it was working, and now we already have our 2 indicators up on the chart. So I would get rid of this print function because it doesn't even matter what those numbers are. I just wanted to show you how those variables were working. So that's it. That's all that we're going to do in the onInit function. And then it will return whether or not it has succeeded or not. If something's messed up in this initialization phase, it would return a -1 for failed, and then nothing would happen. No code would show up. So now we're going to move on to the on tick. So this happens every time price changes even a little bit. Tick is the smallest amount of price movement that there can be. Every time we get price movement, this piece of code will run. So first, we need some more variables. Now these ones are going to be doubles. What we declared before were integers, which were simple numbers, 0, 1, or 2. And now a double just allows you to have decimal point because price can have decimal point, right? So you could have $100.05. So that is a double. So we want to be able to store price values. Our fast MA and our slow MA. So we're declaring 2 double containers that are able to store price values. But in fact, these are arrays, and I've identified that with these square brackets. So this is slightly complex, but I think you should be able to visualize it. You can imagine when you have the moving average on the screen, you have a data point for every bar. So at this bar, the average is 100,000. The bar before, the average was 99,000. The bar before that, it was 98,000. So what if you want to store all of these values? You want to have an array of containers. And further, we're going to put in the number 2 here because we only need them to be size 2. In the case of this program, we want to know the current price, where the average is in the current bar, and then we want to know where the average was in the last bar. When we have the price of the current bar moving average and the last bar moving average, then we can compare the fast moving average to the slow moving average, and we'll know if one has crossed over the other. That's what we just created. We created 2 arrays of size 2, and now we use the copy buffer function copy the values from our indicator into these new arrays. So it looks like this. So we call the copy buffer function And the parameters are the handle to the indicator. 0 means take the value of the current buffer. And then the next 0 means we start with the current candle. And the 2 means that we're copying 2 values into the array. And then the last parameter is the name of the array where we want to store those values. And we're almost done now. All we have to do is determine if a cross has happened between our 2 moving averages, and then we'll know whether or not to open a position. We need another variable of type Boolean. So we're going to say bool. A Boolean is just a variable that contains either true or false. That's it. Once we open a position, we'll set this variable to true. And once we close that position, we'll set it back to false. That way we won't open multiple positions. Right into declaration line, we'll go bool position open. We're going to set it to position select and the current symbol. Don't forget your semicolon. So this symbol function returns the current symbol and puts it in here. And then that goes into position select. And if we're able to select a position, it returns true, and it will store true in our variable name position open. That's all that's doing. So in simple language, it's just telling us whether or not we have a position open. And then we're storing that as true or false. Now this next line is a bit tricky. So we create this if statement. So if all of these conditions are true, we'll run the code inside. The code inside will open the position. So if the fast moving average at the current bar is greater than the slow moving average at the current bar, and the fast moving average of the last bar was below the slow moving average at the last bar, that means we just had a crossover. So if we had that crossover moving up and we don't currently have a position open, that's what the exclamation point means. That means if not true, then we can open the position. Let's do that open position here. So we're just going to do trade. There's our trade object that we created, dot buy. We're just going to hard code the position size as 0.1, but we will change that later for optimizing. And then again, we want the current symbol. And we could test at this point. Let's compile, see if we've made any errors. No errors. Let's run it. So it's only going to take one position when there's a crossover, but we'll see if it works. So there's our 2 moving averages, and we're waiting for a crossover moving up. So we can probably speed this up just a little bit. There's a crossover moving down. And when we get the crossover moving up, we got a position. So when that crossed over at that position, we took a buy. And now if you come over to trade, you can see we're currently up. We made $726 on that trade just because it closed it automatically when we hit the current date. So what we want now is just to set a condition for when it crosses over on the way down. So now we want to do less than and greater than, and instead of not, if position open is true, meaning we already have a position, then we're going to do trade.position close. And again, the current symbol. And we are actually done this code. That's it. Just that tiny bit of code. Compile, no errors. We'll run it. We already know what's going to happen for the last month. So actually, let's stop this. And instead, let's run it for the last, say, 2 years. So we'll do custom period, and we'll go back to 2023. There we go. And we'll speed this up a little bit. Let's see. So there it's, well, we're going too fast. Too fast. So it took a trade there, and then it closed the trade when it crossed back down. So you can see it is successfully opening trades when it crosses up and successfully closing trades when it crosses down. We've been running for 9 months and we're at a little bit of a loss, but let's just see what happens after 2 years. So here we ran it for 2 years and we are up $3,875. So 38% in 2 years. That would be great. If you go to backtest here, this is on 97% history quality, which is pretty good. Our profit factor is 1.64, not bad. So please, please, please hit the like button and subscribe if this helped you at all. It helps me a lot. It gives me motivation to make more videos. I hope it helped. If you have any questions, you have any problems, put it in the comment, even copy and paste your code. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video. We will get more in depth into how to improve this and make it a real world program. All right, see you in the next one.